Hi everybody, today we are doing a follow-up to our previous exercise. We are going to use photographs as the base of our compositions, and we will simplify those images while still allowing them to tell a story. It is the same technique we did last week, okay? And once again, we are reducing the photographs, which are already quite simple, to their essential shapes and filling them in with solid blocks of color. And to make things easier and more practical, I'm using just 6 colors. And everything else comes from mixing those colors. You don't need to follow natural colors. In fact, going bold and unexpected, for instance, painting one person blue and the other red, that can add an entirely new layer of meaning to your composition. The main thing to keep in mind if you try this technique is color hierarchy, okay? If you choose colors that don't harmonize in tone or value, your piece may become visually confusing, and of course, you don't want that. Also, be mindful of your focal point because this is the first thing that the viewer will notice in your composition. You also need to be careful not to overlap the blocks that will be of the same color or close in value, meaning try to balance darker and lighter as well as the colors themselves. Otherwise, you might lose the clear separation between shapes. There's no need to worry about texture, shadows, or highlights here. The idea is to simplify the shapes, and the texture will come naturally from your brush strokes. If you believe there is no way of keeping the image clear, you can add an edge to your shapes, but at least for the sake of practice, try to avoid that and use just the texture of the brush strokes to define your areas, even when they are of the same color or value. And you do that simply by following the natural flow of the forms. This exercise is very useful because once you feel comfortable with color blocking, you'll also feel more confident adding other elements to your compositions. Shadows, highlights, backgrounds, patterns, everything. It all comes back to mastering the basics and understanding the foundations of your composition. And I don't just think that this style looks visually appealing. It actually invites the viewer to learn more about the characters you're portraying. It also helps you to study color combinations, color structure, and color hierarchy within your compositions. Even if your plan is to later add shadows, highlights, texture, or more detail, this exercise is good in helping you understand how colors behave. When you strip everything back to the bare minimum, you can see much more clearly how to choose the right colors. So even if you're already used to painting more complex compositions, I do encourage you to try this exercise. And before you know it, your first composition is done. Allow me to talk to you a few things beyond technique itself, okay? Because yes, technique matters, style matters, but they are not the heart of the work. The heart comes from you, from your consistency, from your stories, from your intentionality. So let's talk about consistency, okay? If you've been following along these exercises, you have noticed that I have been working on many styles and techniques. They all share some basic elements like the minimalist approach, the color palette, or the absence of realistic details, but we have gone from plain abstract to more realistic compositions. But my intention is just to make it easier for you to find a technique or style you feel more comfortable with. And once you find it, try to use that same style or technique in all your work. Okay. It doesn't have to be forever, but at least for a while, try to do that. This will help you build your artistic personality. So even if you get inspiration from any other external source, whenever you do your work, you do it your way using your own voice. This is what we call artistic consistency. And soon it will become part of your artistic identity. For instance, I got a recent comment of a viewer that was a bit disappointed of a cat I painted. Apparently, he liked what I did with the other animals, but the cat was a bit too simple. But I don't ever expect anyone to do the same thing that I'm doing. What I do, as I have already mentioned, is show you what you can do and not what you should do. This is valid for the pieces that you don't like, but also, and most importantly, for those that you do like. So if you liked the reference, great. But rather than copying it, try to make your own. Try to create your own version of it in a style and technique and also the material that you're more comfortable with. So if you saw a oil painting but you only paint with wash, great. Make yours with wash. Consistency will lead to your visual identity. So when you're starting, especially if you're excited and if you're curious, and it's a good thing that you are both, it's very tempting to jump from style to style, from medium to medium, from technique to technique, because it's part of your natural instinct to learn, to explore. It is a very good thing, okay? And actually, this is the best part of your creative journey. It's when you're led by your curiosity. So, experimentation is important. However, if you want to develop a body of work that feels deliberate, if you want people to look at a painting and immediately recognize it as yours, you need a degree of consistency. That could mean staying within a limited color palette, repeating certain motifs, sticking to a particular type of brushwork, or working with the same material long enough to understand it deeply. Think of your style as a language, okay? If you switch languages in every sentence, the message becomes a little bit confusing, but when you develop a consistent language, people can hear it even without the subtitles. So technically, style isn't something that you find, it's something that you build. People often think that style is something they stumble upon suddenly, but style is really something that grows as you repeat certain decisions over and over. Like, I like flat colors. I like bold silhouettes. I like this color combination. I like black and white. I like simplified shapes. I like figurative. I like abstractions. All those tiny preferences add up. And then a viewer looks at your work and sees a thread, a connection, a familiarity. And that connection is what makes your work recognizable. Even when you switch subjects, style is not the subject, style is not the technique. Style is the way you see the world and you express it through whatever material you're holding. So, why story matters more than technique? Some paintings are technically impressive. Every fold, every shadow, every detail in perfect place. However, without a story, they don't linger in the viewer's mind. You understand what I'm trying to say? Sometimes you see paintings that might be simpler, less polished, imperfect, and yet they stay with you. And why? Because they carry a story, because they carry a connection, because they carry a meaning that goes beyond form. It goes beyond the colors, it goes beyond the technique, it goes beyond the style itself. That doesn't mean your painting needs a plot. You don't need to explain anything. You just need intention. A consistent body of work naturally carries a narrative. It starts to feel like a collection of conversations or a gallery of emotional snapshots. When someone sees a series, it tells them this is how these artists see the world. This is how they feel color. This is their rhythm, their temperament, their thoughts. Technique shows what your hands can do. Story shows what your inner world wants to say. When your pieces share color choices, similar silhouettes, or recurring atmosphere, a recognizable simplicity or complexity, or a particular emotional tone, you're not just making paintings, you are building a world. And people connect with worlds much more than with isolated works. Your art is an invitation. When you paint consistently with a style, your work begins to whisper to the viewer, come in, stay for a while. There's more here if you want to see it. A painting becomes more than its colors or shapes. It becomes an invitation, a confession, a calling, a quiet dialogue, a glimpse into the artist's inner landscape. A technically perfect piece can sometimes feel emotionally silent. However, a simple piece infused with intention can feel like a conversation. So people don't buy perfection. People don't remember perfection. People remember connection. Your body of work is a story that you're writing. Each painting in a series is a chapter. Each choice you repeat, every color, every posture, every simplified shape is a sentence that adds to your artistic voice. And the more cohesive your decisions, the clearer your story becomes. Even if your technique is simple, even if you're just beginning, even if you feel unsure, you are already writing your story one work at a time. And that story doesn't need to be grand, it just needs to be true to you, to the viewer, to the connection you're building. So consistency doesn't make your work predictable. It makes it recognizable. It makes it intentional. And most importantly, it makes it yours. And remember, you don't need permission. You don't need supervision. You don't need anything to start making art, okay? You don't need experience to make art. Experience comes from practice. What you do need is curiosity. What you do need is the courage to begin and to keep going. So So that's it. And these are the results of what we've done today. I hope you've learned something new today and that you can see how valuable it is to simplify everything now and then. Even for those who are used to more complex compositions, it is a wonderful way to understand how simplicity forms the foundation of a strong artwork. As always, keep on practicing and thank you for joining us.